When we started filming, the intention, certainly when Jaz and I discussed, was the detail. And the detail in the film has been an intense 10 years of research, recutting, cutting stuff out, having to then go off and re-interview people or find new people to interview just to continue a story that was constantly changing all the time. So I think our first day of filming in Prague, I think Jaz and I had a huge argument. We didn't want to, all my shot list, everything I wanted to achieve was thrown out the door. And I realised from that moment on is that you can't fight the experience of making a film, you just have to enjoy it, and then things happen. And in this particular film, the detail came from that. And it's been a life-changing 10 years, 12 years, in fact, if you think about it. But having shot Jaz for his classical projects, you know, as a filmmaker, the process, the jigsaw of making and cutting the story just fell together quite easily. And from the experience that I've had, I can see things now in such detail. It's almost worrying, actually. My next project will probably drive me even more mad, I hope.
Steve, you're sitting in the middle as producer. I mean, we heard the word arguments mentioned. Were there arguments, or was this a placid and tranquil 12 years?
I don't think anyone in this room believes it was a placid or tranquil 12 years. You know, when you're working with people, I think it was actually Dave, who is Jaz's Killing Joke's manager, who said to me, you know, you're in an interesting position, Steve, because you're working with two fiercely creative individuals in Shaun and Jaz. And you are, and there's never, you know, true fights or hate or any of that kind of stuff. You know, the message of the story is true. There's a lot of love between friends. But of course, different people have different ideas as to how it's going to evolve and happen. And I think the film that Shaun and Jaz originally conceived 12 years ago is remarkably different from what you've all just seen. You know, it was about sort of 50% of it. It's like grown and expanded and evolved. And it was interesting, you noted the collaborative element in terms of how many people, not just the three of us sitting here, but you know, you saw the credits list. This is hundreds of people who have contributed to this film, photographers, filmmakers, people who appeared in it and talked about it and shared their experiences. You know, that's one of the wonderful things about documentary filmmaking. They truly are collaborative. You've got like, you know, a couple of creative people at the head of the table kind of working out exactly what bits you want to take. But you're still reliant on a massive amount of people, you know, and especially Killing Joke in this case. You know, the music informs so much of the film.
Tell me in a nuts and bolts sort of sense where the archive came from and how you started sifting through what I imagine is an awful lot of archive footage.
The first big thank you is to you guys, because you know you people collected Killing Joke footage as fans since year dot, and you know people like the gatherers. I'll name a few people. John Chapman, fantastic help, gave me access to pictures, footage. You know, a lot of this stuff is also on YouTube. I mean, you know, you just got to shift through it and find the right context.
This is every producer's nightmare when your director calls up and says, yeah, I found a load of stuff on YouTube. You can figure out who made it, can't you?
In the weird thing, it is all there already. And, you know, my job was to slot it together and put it together. And also the interviews and connect Jaz's story to the final finished. But I'd like to say, you know, there's 5 stories here. There's 5 magic books of Killing Joke. Each member of Killing Joke deserves a film. I hope that this particular, I'm not asking for any more Killing Joke films, I must admit, at this stage. But I think, you know, justice says that you know, Youth, Geordie, Raven, Big Paul, they all deserve a film. And I've just been lucky to make this one.
That process of looking through the archive, Jasmine, this is a question for you. How strange was that? Because it seems like it must almost be like your life flashing before your eyes slightly when you see these moments from your life assembled, you know, in chronological order. Was that strange or was that not strange?
Yeah, it is strange. It's actually, there are parts of the film that are very difficult for me to watch, as you can imagine, especially the area of Paul Raven. Yeah, it is a little bit like that. I feel like I've crammed a lot of lifetimes into one life. I mean, I've really got lots of different lives all the way around the world in lots of different places. You'd be surprised. We could actually have more countries in this film than you imagine. Yes, it is. It forces me to recollect on the fact that I've lived a life without any boundaries, and I've enjoyed an incredible freedom that I want. I'd like to see the next generation enjoy, but it's just not turning out like that, is it? I mean, we're heading towards fascism, and it really disturbs me, the way the world's, the direction in which it's moving. For example, you know, I've got an American tour soon with Killing Joke, and I'm told that if you don't accept the government's line on 9/11, that you are considered a terrorist in America now, which really disturbs me because I don't accept the official view on 9/11, but I'm certainly not a terrorist, you know. And I think everybody else feels the same. We've moved into an era since the Snowden revelations where everybody self-censors, and I find it just disgusts me. You know, I mean, I don't use the internet, as everybody knows, but I was forced to talk to my brother recently. And we've had a big falling out, I don't mind saying, about the whole 9/11 thing. It took about 7-8 years to heal our division. My point is, whatever anyone thinks about 9/11, we still live in countries, Western countries, where we have free speech. And the fact that I have a dissenting view on 9/11 doesn't make me a terrorist. And I'm really worried about the way everything's going. You know, in the states of Florida now, every baby that's born has to be microchipped. So it's all coming true, you know. And why are they building 2,500 FEMA camps in America, internment and resettlement camps? Why are they doing this? And it goes even further than this, because the reason why we have really grave doubts about 9/11 is that there's a certain member in our band that works with Mr. Rockefeller. So we have an inside story, but I'm not going to talk about that. Yeah.
Okay. In the film, it leads me on to my next question, which in the film, one of the descriptions of you is as a man who's attracted to countries that are filled with collapse and decay. So I wanted to ask you how you feel about England in 2015.
This country, I hate this country. I love the people here. I mean, let's talk about insanity. Insanity is when all three parties support Trident. Trident is 400 billion, right? And the fact is, we can't even launch this thing. We have to get permission from the president of the US to launch. So we get the bill, and all three, you can't even vote against it. All three parties support it. So I don't know what to think about this country. The fact that 35 years ago, Trafalgar Square was full of people protesting about nuclear power, nuclear energy, nuclear everything. And now you wouldn't get one person there. Everybody's too sort of passive, fluorided out, whatever, distracted with their little gadgets. It just wouldn't happen these days, would it? And the fact is, there's 3 or 4 nuclear power stations being built in the United Kingdom now. So we haven't learned from Chernobyl, we haven't learned from Fukushima, which is incidentally spewing loads of radioactive material out into the oceans as we speak. And the fact that you don't hear about it is there's 4 companies own the global media. And that's where we are with these trade agreements that Obama's agreeing to. You know, we can't even do anything against the corporations. There's no more law. It's insane, the world we're moving into. What's next?
We'll talk about that, I'm sure. We'll pick that up. But for now, I wanted to ask Shaun a question, which is about turning this story into cinema and how you treated this story visually. And actually, sitting here next to Jaz, I mean, one of the things that strikes you is the way that normally you'd have a talking head, you would have the full face, and obviously you're not doing that with Jaz. So tell me about that decision.
Again, the locations we went to and the different elements that each location had was a huge, how shall I say, jigsaw decision-making process for me, because Glastonbury, Iona, there's lots of earth. The travelling to Nazca is through air. Cairo is fire, situations and everything that was happening in Cairo at the time. And then finally to New Zealand, which is all water. Every shot we did was with water, waterfalls, underwater streams, the whole thing. So I treated it almost colour blocks in a weird way. And then from there, decided to sort of build my story around basically 3 three linear stories or three helixes of stories that are all interconnected. And sometimes the dates and the times don't match, but that's not the point, because it's a continuous story that continues right through the end. And then in fact the circle, and it starts again, and that's the whole premise for my the statement I made, which is neither beginning nor end, because it is an ongoing cycle of life.
How did you treat the live footage? I suppose I'm thinking specifically of I think it's the Reading Hexagon gig.
Yeah.
Because obviously you were
Well,
working with the footage.
I had to note the various albums. I was a bit selfish, the ones that I like, as much as the story itself, and obviously connect it with the times and the dates. But I mean, from that point on, really, you know, the talking heads and the footage carries it through. It was quite, I think once the original story, which we cut in, wasn't working, we got rid of that character, and then we came back to basically treating it in a much more simpler fashion, and the blocks all fell together fairly easy. It did take me a couple of years of editing, which I could have probably have used for, this film would have been out sooner. But having said that, I think good things take time, and I hope, certainly from watching it on the big screen, from a little computer screen, I think you can see the love and the attention that's been put in. I mean, it is archival footage, but I've tried to give it a look and tried to make it as cinematic as I possibly can.